Im eshkachech Yerushalayim. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill. That comes from, stretching over here. That comes from a verse in Tehillim. The chapter of Tehillim, chapter 137, everybody, certainly anybody older than me, or my age and older, would know it. L'havdil elef havdolos, because there was a group called Boni M that sang a song by the rivers of Babylon. And there is a custom that we have, that we say this chapter of Tehillim before benching. Some people say it on a weekday. On a Shabbos and a Yom Tov we say Shir Amalos, but on a weekday we say Al Naros Bavel Sham Yishavnu Gam Bachinu Zochrenu Es Tzion. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and also we wept. Now the Boni M changed the words, obviously. When we remembered Tzion, they had nothing to do with remembering Tzion. This is David HaMelech writing a chapter of Tehillim 440 years, give or take, before we were sitting by the rivers of Babylon and weeping. So it was pure prophecy from David HaMelech's part. Chapter 137 of Tehillim. On the willows, within it we hung our lyres. There, our captors requested words of song. With our lyres we played joyous music with songs of Tzion. How can we sing the song of Hashem upon the soil of an alien God? And then what we say at a wedding, this verse that's up on the screen, where we break the glass at a wedding. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim. If I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill, and let my tongue adhere to my palate. If I fail to remember you, if I fail to elevate Yerushalayim above the foremost of my joys, remember Hashem, to repay the offspring of Edom, De Yerushalayim, to destroy those who destroy Yerushalayim. Because we were now at the rivers of Babylon. We were forced, the Levium were forced to play their harps on the rivers, and many of them cut off their thumbs so they couldn't play, because they were in such mourning. Yerushalayim was now destroyed. Yerushalayim was a complete wasteland. That's the first temple. And they had been warned by the prophet Jeremiah, by the prophet Yeshaya, other prophets, that things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. Jeremiah wrote Eicha, he wrote Lamentations. I'm going to go through the 5 chapters of Lamentations at a very high level. But I just want everybody to think about going to visit the city of Jerusalem today. It's the most incredible experience. I just asked the internet to throw 6 pictures of the modern city of Yerushalayim. And this is what came up with that. I did ask it to show a picture of the Shuk on a Friday. That's definitely not a Friday, because there's about 1,000 people more in that little road there. That's probably a Tuesday morning or something. But Yerushalayim today is a vibrant city. It is a city like no other. It's a city that every building is built with Jerusalem stone, except 2. There's 2 Chabad houses that are built like 770. And apparently they pay a fine every year to the city of Jerusalem because they're not made of Jerusalem stone. As far as I know, that was introduced as part of the Balfour Declaration. At that time, under the British mandate, Britain said Jerusalem needs to look like this because it's such a beautiful city. And, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, the golden city, the reflection of the sun off those stones is just magnificent. It's incredible. Yerushalayim, we are there. We've got, they talk about the city is divided, East and West Jerusalem. And if you go on the light rail, not here, this is on Yafo, but if the light rail goes down Yafo that way and it turns left and goes past the old city, and as you're going up the hill past Mea Shearim on the left, and also Mea Yeshiva, on the right there's a few hotels, but that on the right-hand side there is Damascus Gate firstly, and then you go away from the old city. That whole area on the right is East Jerusalem, but there are suburbs of Jews that live there in East Jerusalem. Some years ago we went on a tour of various parts of Yerushalayim, and the tour guide told us at the time, it was 2014, do you know how many Jews live in East Jerusalem? No idea. He said, at that stage, I don't know how many it's now, about 120,000. So it's more now. But that suburb of French Hill, for example, is officially East Jerusalem. But it's all Jerusalem. There's no East and West Jerusalem. Yerushalayim is a city of all people. Yerushalayim, it's the center of all cities. We were speaking between the two shirim about different faiths. Yerushalayim is the central point, certainly of Judaism and Christianity, absolutely. Islam, it's, I think, their third holiest site. It's kind of adopted, but it's still a very holy city for them. And so that's why where you have this extreme holiness, the way the world works is Hashem has the world in balance. And you can have this extreme opposite. You have to have both. There has to be the ability to achieve incredible holiness and also the ability to fall very low, because otherwise the world's not in balance. We had to have Moshe Rabbeinu. The nations of the world had to have a Bilam. Bilam could have been as great as Moshe. He had the ability to be the same level of Moshe. He chose to go negative. But Yerushalayim is a vibrant city. And yet we say, and we still say it, I need to weep for Yerushalayim. We cry. People sit down on Tisha B'Av on Thursday morning and they cry for Yerushalayim. Why are they crying? This is the most incredible city in the world. It's the best of the best. And yet we sit there. 2 years ago, I was sitting probably just behind here on the floor at the Kotel, reading Kinnos, working through the Kinnos, trying to understand what I was doing. Why? I'm like as close as I can be to Hashem. No, I'm not. That wall is about as close as we can go to Hashem right now. But that wall is the outer retaining wall of the Temple Mount. It's not even the temple wall. It's the Temple Mount wall. Up on the top of the hill where the Golden Dome is where the temple's going to sit. And that's where we're looking towards. Not to destroy the dome and kill the people there. Hashem will do what Hashem needs to do to rebuild the temple and bring the third temple. Our job is to make that connection. And so the prophecies say when Hashem leaves the temple will be destroyed, because rather destroy bricks and mortar than the Jewish people. And Hashem is still connect us. And he says he will leave his presence, some part of his Shekhinah, in the Western Wall. And that's why it was never destroyed. When the Romans came to destroy the temple, they sent around 4 generals. And the 4th general, whatever he tried, he couldn't destroy the wall. And he came back and he said to Vespasian, I think it was Titus. It was Titus. I can't destroy that wall. Let's leave it as a sign, as a monument to show how great we were, that we destroyed the whole city, but we left one wall as a monument. But it was actually a prophecy. It was a prophecy that the Western Wall will never be destroyed. And as we discover more of the wall above ground and below ground, we're seeing this centuries and centuries, millennia of building in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim was destroyed for the second time in the year 69, 70 of the Common Era, almost 2,000 years ago. And not long after that, the Romans kicked out every single Jew. And for a period of about 200 years, not a single Jew was allowed in Yerushalayim. It became a Roman city. And if we go there today, if you go to Cardo, that was the mall. That was the shopping mall. That was the Havdil, the Chadston of Yerushalayim, of Irina Kapitolina. And the Romans took over, and the Jews were allowed once a year to walk around the walls of the city to see what they were not allowed into. Today, we walk around the city on Yerushalayim. When we took it back, we'll come back to the 6-day war in a moment. When we took back Yerushalayim, that was what it was about. It's about us being in this incredible city, but it's about us trying to realize, yes, we've got an incredible city, but we are missing something. We're missing something that we can't understand. The way the rabbis describe it, imagine you've got somebody who was born blind. Try and explain to that person colors. They've never seen a color in their life. It's almost impossible to hear that. Or somebody who's deaf. Try and explain to them music. They were born deaf. They've never heard music. You can't. It's almost impossible. For us, we've never seen Yerushalayim in its glory. It's 2,000 years. And in fact, the first temple, another 490 years before that, 480 years before that, temple was destroyed. The first temple was beyond anything that the second temple was. And for us to try and understand that is really, really difficult. We see Yerushalayim as a modern, vibrant city, but we need to know that that's not the Yerushalayim that we want. The Yerushalayim we want is that magnified by X to the power of, because that's what Yerushalayim is about. Yerushalayim is a city where the world can come and connect to Hashem. Yes, right now we can go to the kotel, you can put a note in the wall, you can daven, you can cry. What are we crying for? There's two cryings. One is a crying because of what we're missing out, and the other is a crying because Hashem's presence is there. And you suddenly, they say on Yom Kippur, we shouldn't force ourselves to cry on Yom Kippur. We're doing al chaytz and we've sinned, but if you, it depends on who you listen to. If you do cry on Yom Kippur, it means Hashem is actually with you. People experience this. You go to the kotel, you go to the kotel hakatan, or inside in the shul inside, you can experience that crying feeling. You just suddenly start crying. You don't know why. Why am I crying? Because Hashem is resting His presence on you. Would you like some water?
I don't know what happened.
We can get you some water. There is water just outside if someone wants to get. Okay. So Yerushalayim is the eternal capital. King David bought Yerushalayim in the year 869 before the Common Era. Yerushalayim was the Edomite city. He took it over. The Yerushalayim is a name of peace, where we focus on Shalem, on peace. It's a city of peace. It's a city where the name goes all the way back to Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was the one who essentially gave it this name. When he captured, when the war of the 4 and the 5 kings, when we went to Melchizedek was the Melech Shalem. That's Yerushalayim. It's as I've said, it's a spiritual magnet. It's the one place where we can all feel at home. If we focus on what Yerushalayim's about, and we learn about Yerushalayim, and then we can walk in there and feel the place. If we just walk in as another city, we may or may not feel it. But just being the air of Yerushalayim, it's just completely different place. It says that 10, let me change this slightly. I'll just add a little line that the Gemara says, 10 measures of speech, that's not what it says on the screen, were given to the world. Women took 9.
Okay, I'm happy with
that. Yeah. But this year it says 10 measures of beauty were given to the world, 9 were taken by Yerushalayim.
9/10 of the world.
Correct. No, yeah, it's the same thing. Women should rule the world, 100%. Or do, maybe.
You can't do it.
Okay. Gemara in Kedushin says that Yerushalayim took 9 of the 10 measures of beauty in the world. Eretz Israel took a lot. Harabais took at various different levels, and then the rest of the world gets 1 of these measures. Let's look at Eicha now. Just very, very briefly, I want to look at what Eicha is about. So there are 5 chapters in Eicha. Eicha is how. How can we not sit in solitude? Alas, they translated here. Alas, she sits in solitude. The city that was great with people has become like a widow. Lonely, it's quiet, it's desolate. Now, I've just described a totally different city. But Yerushalayim, the actual city of Yerushalayim, I mean, maybe what we should say is the city of Jerusalem is a vibrant, modern, Western city. It's amazing, it's incredible. The city of Yerushalayim is not there. We don't have Yerushalayim. We don't have that beauty that we can't understand. It's suffering, it's consequence of nation sin. Apologize for the American spelling there. I'll just see recognized.
It hasn't got the temple.
It hasn't got Hashem's presence in full. So that's the difference. And so Yerushalayim in the first chapter of Eicha. Now Eicha runs in the Aleph base. It's basically just it's each of the chapters, well, not all in, but most of it is Aleph base Gimel Dalet through. So the first chapter goes through Aleph through Taf. It does flip around Ayin and Pei. I won't talk about that too much today. But it does. Yirmiyah does flip those letters around. But because and Rabbi Blackman spoke about this a bit on Shabbos, but we put our pear before our eye, and we put our mouth before our eyes. We spoke. We just speak. One of the message of why Yirmiyah might have flipped them around. So this chapter admits that the city brought this upon herself, meaning that we, the Jewish people, brought upon ourselves through us doing sins, through our aveiras. Now, the first temple was destroyed because of the three cardinal sins: bloodshed, adultery, and idol worship, idolatry. That's why it was destroyed. Other Gemaras bring slightly different reasons, but they all focused on those three things for various reasons. There's a Gemara that says they didn't say Birkas HaTorah. They never said blessings on the Torah. Like, these people were learning Torah at an incredibly high level. The way we can, it's hard to understand, but to some degree you can think about it. You got a guy in yeshiva and he's learning. Comes from yeshiva. I heard this from Rambratovitz last week. Comes from yeshiva in the morning and he learns. And he sits there all day, all morning learning. He comes in at 9:30 and he leaves at 1 o'clock. He davens mincha and he goes out in the afternoon. There's a break, a 2 or 3 hour break in the afternoon. And he rapes somebody and he murders somebody else and he bows down to an idol and he comes back at 3 o'clock for afternoon Seder and he learns. It's, to some degree, that's what the people were doing. They were living this dual life, because the pull of idol worship was so strong, and there was just this continual negative pull against people. The time leading up to destruction of the first temple, King Solomon's time, when the temple was built, we had a unified kingdom. King Solomon, Shlomo, Shalem, is all that word of peace means completeness, which is why we use the word for hello, goodbye, and for peace, because it's really about completeness. It's about wholeness, it's about wholesomeness. All as one, as the Echad. Whereas we were divided. And so after Shlomo's death, the kingdom divided. And then later on, there were good kings and bad kings, both in the north and the south. And then the 10 tribes were exiled from the northern kingdom. And this destruction of the temple was just the 2 tribes that were left. And we were sinning. We were learning Torah. We were doing the right thing, but we were also doing the wrong thing. And this is the problem that we have many, many times. We have ups and downs and ups and downs. Each of us in our own lives and the nation as a whole. The goal is to try and become unified, to become one with each other and with Hashem. That's really the message of the Parsha. It's the message of the whole of Eicha, and it's just something we need to focus on. Chapter 2 focus on Hashem's anger. Divine anger, like a warrior turning against his own people, tearing down the temple, the walls, the palaces, the whole city. There were false prophets. They get blamed for not warning the people to change their ways. The leadership just wasn't working. There's images in this chapter of starving children, begging their mothers for food in the streets, but it ends with a desperate cry for the people to pour out their hearts to Hashem in prayer through the night. Just daven to Hashem. I'm running through this relatively quickly because I'd like to get to a little bit about the 3 weeks and a little bit about where we're at. Chapter 3. Chapter 3 describes our struggling, our personal struggles, how Hashem was angry at us, almost like a warrior turning against his own people, tearing down the temple. Oh, that's chapter 2, sorry. Written from the point of view of one person, traditionally understood as the prophet Yirmiyah. Yirmiyah is writing it, describing his intense personal suffering. Darkness, broken bones, being trapped and being mocked. The people mocked him because he wrote this book. They wanted to kill him. But in the middle, the tone shifts and there's a little bit of hope coming through. Every now and again, we see hope. This chapter reflects that on why bad things happen as a consequence of sin. Because of the way we sin, the bad things happen. And he says, examine yourself. Just focus on where you're at. Return to Hashem. And it closes with a plea for justice against those who are tormented again. Those who tormented the people. Just, Hashem, bring justice to the people who are tormenting us. Where is chapter 4 in my notes? Right, chapter 4. Eicha talks about Yerushalayim. Now, we're talking about Yerushalayim of the first temple. It was glorious. It was an incredible city. And it contrasts how things were before how amazing Yerushalayim was, and how it's changed. So chapters 4, chapters 3, chapter 2, all start with the word Eicha. Alas, remember, just focus on, remember, alas, the things were different. It's a chapter of contrast. Princes once looked glowing and healthy are now completely famished, starving. They're suffering from malnutrition. They used to be well fed, now they're just dropping dead in the streets. The imagery in this book is probably the most disturbing of all of Eicha. And it ends with a warning to Edom. Edom is our enemies. Edom was our cousin. Edom is represented by Rome. Rome didn't exist in First Temple times yet. But it's a message to all of the Jewish people's enemies. Their turn for punishment will come. We have been punished for a long, long, long time, but they will all be punished. And a promise that Sion's punishment is now complete. At that point in time, we will be finished being punished. And then we come to chapter 5. And chapter 5 is the one chapter that is not in the Aleph base. It starts with Zechor Hashem me hayalanu. Remember Hashem, what's befallen us. It's a direct prayer to Hashem. It's a plea listing out hardships that people have endured, loss of land, forced labor, hunger, humiliation, but it ends with one of the most well-known lines in Jewish liturgy. Hashivenu Hashem elecha v'nashuva chadesh yamenu kekedem. Bring us back, Hashem, as we're going to return. Renew us like in days of old. And we repeat that phrase at the end, and we sing that praise. It's a song of hope, of prayer, of asking Hashem, please bring us back. Bring us back to the level we were at, because that's really what we need. And so we're going to read Eicha on Wednesday night in a mournful tune, sitting on the floor with low lights, because we need to remember we're in mourning. We described Yerushalayim, the temple. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos describes 10 things that happened, 10 miracles that happened in the temple. These happened, all of them in the first temple, not all in the second. I'll read through them very quickly. I know you can't read the screen, so don't focus on reading the screen. But there was no miscarriage. The smell of the offerings in Yerushalayim was so incredible that it made sure that no women ever miscarried. This was a butchery. It was an abattoir. It was an outdoor abattoir of the temple. There was slaughtering of animals day in, day out, all day there was slaughtering of animals. There was never any flesh that went putrid. No sacred meat ever went off. There was no wormy meat. It didn't go off. There was no refrigeration either. The meat always stayed fresh. There was never a fly in Yerushalayim, an outdoor slaughterhouse. Not a single fly. Now, everyone knows the heat of Yerushalayim at this time of the year. No flies in the thing. The Mishnah in Yuma about Yom Kippur discusses how the Kohen Gadol was sequestrated for 7 days. It was set aside. He was taught the laws. One of the major problems is if you go into the temple having had a seminal emission, it's subject to a penalty of kares, of spiritual excision. You have to be ritually pure. That's one of the things that makes a person impure. Never did a high priest have on Erev Yom Kippur an emission. It was outdoors. The altar was outdoors with fires on it. It could rain. Yerushalayim, we all know how it rains sometimes in winter. Never once were the fires put out on the outdoor altar in Mizbeach. Wind didn't affect the smoke. The smoke went straight up. There was never a wind that affected that smoke. The offerings, there was never a defect. The offerings were always found to be perfect. The Omer offering, which was brought on second day Pesach, the 2 loaves on Shavuos were always perfect. The showbread, the Lechem Hapanim, which were brought into the temple on a Friday, on a Shabbos, and the last week's ones that were left there from the previous Shabbos were taken out and eaten that day, and they were as fresh as if they'd just come out the oven after sitting there for a week inside in the building, in the Kodesh, in the holy part of the temple, and may have been baked on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, depending if it was Yom Tov before that. If it was Rosh Hashanah on Thursday, Friday, they had to bake them on Wednesday. Baked on Wednesday, brought in on Shabbos, and then kept till the following Shabbos, and then eaten, and they were still steaming hot, as if they were just fresh out the oven. there was always room for bowing down. Millions of people come into the very small area. And millions of people came there, and there was always room for everybody to bow down completely flat on the ground. And you always had your own space around you. There were never anybody bitten by a snake or a scorpion in Yerushalayim. It was completely free from harm from snakes and scorpions. They might have been there, but they never bit anybody. And Yerushalayim, no man could ever come to Yerushalayim, no human being could come to Yerushalayim and not have a place to stay. There was always a free Airbnb for anybody that wanted it. There was always a place to stay. Now, Yerushalayim, old city, is less than a square kilometer. Today, the old city we've got today is not the old city of temple times. Part of it is, but there's Ir David, which is now outside the old city. What they call Migdal David. If you come into Shar Yafo, Jaffa Gate, just as you come in, there's a tower on the right-hand side. That's called Migdal David, the Tower of David. That's not King David's tower. It's a much later thing. It was named that for various different reasons. Ir David, the city of David, and his palace is on the other side of the old city in East Jerusalem. We went on a tour of it when we were there last time. They've discovered, it's incredible, the archaeological diggings, what they found there. It's just unbelievable what you can see from 3,000 years ago. There is a wall cutting through the Jewish quarter of the old city, going back to Chizkiah's days, first temple times. It's 6 meters wide. It's below ground. It's like a story below ground, but a 6 meter wide wall. That's probably an outer wall of the old city from that time. It's well in the middle of today's old city. So the sacred part of the old city, of the city of Yerushalayim, where you're allowed to eat truma, Maaseh Sheni, where offerings, the Pesach offerings allowed to be eaten, we don't know exactly, but it will be revealed to us with Mashiach. But Yerushalayim was filled with miracles, one miracle after another. Yes, we do experience things there, but Yerushalayim today is not the Yerushalayim that we had then. That's Yerushalayim we're looking for. So what happened? 1948, the state of Israel is declared. The United Nations, by their good graces, votes to create a Jewish state. And as we created, the Declaration of Independence happened, the War of Independence, we're invaded, and we essentially are able to fight off most of the opposition with almost no weapons and no army whatsoever. It was just basically groups of individuals and small groups of people that got together. Unfortunately, we lost the old city. That Jewish quarter that we had in the old city was taken over, and the Jordanians took over. And from 48 to 67, we were not allowed in the old city. And come 67, and the 6-Day War, the most incredible miracle of modern times, where we were in Yerushalayim. And Colonel Mota Gur called out, Har Habayis B'Yadeinu, the Temple Mount's in our hands. We were on the Temple Mount. We were standing at the Kosel. There's a story, Rabbi Breitovitz brought it. Most of the soldiers the paratroopers who were in the old city first up, who went in there, were boys from Hester yeshivas. And they came into the old city and they saw the walls of the Kotel. First time Jewish people had seen it since 48. The Jewish quarter was a complete rubbish dump. The Arabs in Yerushalayim didn't rebuild or anything. They just trashed the place. And they got to the Kotel and they stood there crying their eyes out. And standing a little bit further back was a non-religious soldier, completely secular soldier. And he was crying. And they asked him, what are you crying for? And he said, I'm crying because I don't know what to cry for. He didn't have an education of what Yerushalayim was about. He didn't know what to cry for. The Dati Leumi soldiers, the Hester boys, knew exactly what they were crying for. We had Yerushalayim. The old city today, the Jewish quarter, is thriving. We've rebuilt shuls, the Chuvah shul, the Tiferes Yisrael shuls. It was almost rebuilt in December. I'm sure it's being used now. Other places, the whole Kotel Plaza, the Eish HaTorah looking over the Kotel, Yeshivat HaKotel next door. I mean, there's incredible places in the old city. Jewish quarter is pumping, let's say. It's just unbelievable. We've got pictures of, if we think about Birkas Kohanim on Sukkot and on Pesach and Chol HaMoed, where you've got tens of thousands of people, 100,000 people cramped in the Kotel Plaza with the Kohanim doing the traditional blessing. In Eretz Israel, certainly in Yerushalayim and parts of Israel, the Sephardi custom is they do Birkas Kohanim every day. And therefore in Yerushalayim and most of Israel, it's done every single day in Shachris and on Shabbos and Yom Tov and Shachris and Musaf. We only do it because the Ramah rules, we're not at our full level of joy. On Yom Tov we are, so on Yom Tov the Kohanim do the blessing. But to experience that is just, it's beyond anything we can fathom. It was in our hands. For whatever reason, by the rabbis in 67 and by the government in 67, they gave the Temple Mount back to the Jordanians to be in control of it. We were there. Har Bayis Biyadenu. Temple Mount was in our hands. Shem didn't want it to be ours just yet. We were not ready for a new temple, but we should be. And that's really the focus of us. What are we looking at? We are looking at Har Habayis Biyadenu. We want to get to Har Habayis. But how do we get there? So Rav Soloveitchik brings a connection between a person who is in mourning for a family member versus the mourning of the 3 weeks. They're the complete opposite of each other. He says when a person loses a family member, they're in personal mourning. The day of the death is horrific. The funeral, the leading up to the funeral, it is intense mourning. The first few days of Shiva are real intense mourning. And then they say you shouldn't just pay a Shiva call to someone on the day of the funeral or the day after. If you're close to the person, family, you're going to daven, it's different. But just to pay a Shiva call in the first couple of days, let the people grieve with the family, with those that they're very close to. If you're not so close, then maybe wait till the 4th day kind of thing, because that's personal grieving. It's like, it's still very, very raw. By the end of Shiva, and when the people get up from Shiva, they're starting to move away. And the process of Shiva is when people get up, there's a beautiful custom where people get up and they go for a walk around the block. Be signifying, now I'm coming back into real life. Yes, I've still got my incredible loss and I'm still obviously very attached to my relative who no longer is with us, but I need to get back into the real world. And we go through the process, a person who's lost a relative other than a parent has Shloshim. And through Shloshim, they go through the mourning period so that at the end of Shloshim, they're able to get up, and that's the end of mourning for them. But then for a person who loses a parent, they've got the next 11 months of mourning for the year. And things get, I'll use the word easier and easier, because the memory, if Hashem gave us a memory that we remembered everything exactly as it was, we would never be able to cope. No human being could cope, because that raw emotion of losing someone would be with us all the time. And so Hashem blocks our memories and lets it fade slowly so that we still have an amazing memory of people, but not at the level of grief of losing them. We start remembering, and that's why one of the reasons in a hesped you should talk about the positive things the person did. And in like when you talk about the person, you start remembering the good things they did and where they were at and how amazing they were, and those good things that person was about, what they gave to this world, to their family. And slowly our personal mourning goes down, and that's depicted by these stairs going down. Rav Soloveitchik says the 3 weeks are the opposite. As I described, and most of what I'm saying here is from Rabbi Breitovitz in a share that I heard last week. How do we describe hearing to a person who's been deaf their entire life? The sound of a symphony orchestra, you can't. How do you describe colors to a person who's been blind their whole life? You can't. That's us. We are that deaf child. We are that blind child to what is the temple's about. All we've got is Mishnahs and Gemaras and Midrashim and books and stories telling us what things were like, but none of us were ever there. And so the rabbis put in place a reverse mourning period, whereby we start with Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the fast of the 17th of Tammuz, where the mourning starts slowly. And there's different customs how this works. I'll describe the Ashkenazi custom. There are very different customs, and within the Ashkenazi customs there's different customs. But we have the 9 days. Let's start again. We have the beginning of the 3 weeks. the first part. We start with a fast day. It's a half-day fast day. We remember that Moshe broke the tablets that day. It was the sin of the golden calf. We remember that the temple walls were breached, that an idol was brought in the temple, that a Sefer Torah was destroyed. We remember those things. And we go into semi-mourning. We don't have weddings, and we don't play music. And we just have a step back from our normal lives, but it's just a short step, similar to the mourning in the 11 months for a parent. But then we get to Rosh Chodesh Av, and we kind of ramp up that mourning. And there's different customs, but from Rosh Chodesh Av, what we call the 9 days, we take a step even further back. We don't eat meat, and we don't drink wine, except on Shabbos. Meat and wine are those things that bring joy. The Gemara says there's no joy except for eating meat and drinking wine. It's referring to the meat of the offerings, but people know, men know about steaks. A good steak is not much better than that. I can't say that because I'm not so attached to my food. I'll kind of, what I like I eat, and what I don't like I don't eat, and that's my line in the sand. But we don't eat meat and we don't drink wine. We refrain from certain things. We don't wear clean clothes. Like many people have a custom before Rosh Chodesh Av, we put on all the shirts we're going to wear for the week and wear them for some time, so that I'm not wearing freshly ironed and cleaned clothes. People don't have full showers. You make your shower a little bit cooler this week, the 9 days, or you wash parts of your body. You don't stand in the shower having an enjoyable shower. There's different levels and different things that people do, but we do things to remind us that we are in mourning. We're getting closer and closer to that mourning until we come to just Erev Tisha B'Av. And Erev Tisha B'Av, we sit down on the floor and we eat a piece of bread and a boiled egg to remind us that we're in mourning. The food that a mourner will eat when they come home from the funeral, we eat. But not only that, people have a custom, we dip it in some ashes to remind us that the temple has been burnt and destroyed. And we sit on the floor. And we're not allowed to bench. We're not allowed to bench with the mezuzah. We can't have 3 people together and saying mezuzah. We eat separately because we need to contemplate. And we go into the fast. We take off before the fast. We take off our leather shoes and we put on like exact same as Yom Kippur. And all the restrictions of Yom Kippur are exact same as the restrictions of the fast day, to make us feel, oh, I'm missing something. We sit on the floor till lunchtime for those of us that can, or low down on a low stool like a mourner does. If you can't sit on a low stool, don't hurt your back, and rather sit on a normal chair if it's going to be harm you physically. We shouldn't do anything to harm ourselves physically. But we take a step back from life, very, very similar to what we do on Yom Kippur. Totally different focus. Yom Kippur is what we're going to gain. We're going to gain complete atonement from Hashem for all the things we've done wrong. Here, we're connecting to Hashem, that what we're missing out. What are we missing out on? And we go through the day and we work through and we say 46 chapters of Kinnos. Many shuls today don't say all the Kinnos. We have abbreviated Kinnos where we go through and explain. And the Kinnos, early ones, were mostly written by Rebbe Lazar Kalia. He was a Python, a poet who wrote the most incredible poetry. It's very, very difficult language. And we've got Kinnos today to explain it all. There are 2 Kinnos that were, and then the Kinnos go through the first temple, the second temple, what happened in the Middle Ages, the Crusades, Tach v'Tat, various different times in history. And more modern times, there's 2 Kinnos that are put into most of our newer Kinnos books that were written about the Shoah, about the Holocaust. One written by the Bobova Rebbe and one written by Reb Shimon Schwab. And many shuls say one or both of them. But we go through this process of trying to understand what happened, what are we missing out? And what we're missing out on is that connection to Hashem. And so the goal of the 3 weeks, the goal of the 9 days, the week of Tisha B'Av, we're in that week now, is to make that connection, to say, why are we not in Yerushalayim, the proper city of Yerushalayim? Where do we need to go to get to Yerushalayim? Oh, why are we not there? Second temple was destroyed because of sinas chinam, because of baseless hatred. Because we spoke Lashon Hara about other people. We spoke about other people. We saw somebody walk in the room. Oh, I don't like that person. No reason why. Just, I don't like the look of that person. Not my friend. No. We need to see beyond that. We need to say, everybody's created in the image of Hashem. Every one of us is in Hashem's image, And if we create in Hashem's image, then every one of us has got that spark of Hashem in us, in our neshama. We need to bring out our own sparks so that other people can be attracted to us, that we become light to other people. And how do we do that? By watching how we speak, watching how we deal with other people, watching how we recognize, yes, there are different people in the world with different things, but all of us should be focused on, let's connect to Hashem. Let's do like the Pasha says, and be connected today to Hashem through that devekas. Then Hashem will bring us back. Hashem, bring us back so that it'll be like the days of old.